Hello everybody, it's Kirsty, and today I am doing purely a forensic analysis, my own forensic analysis on the information that we have learnt and screenshots and anything that I could possibly gather and what I've researched in order to try and understand what happened to Gannon on between the 26th, 27th and 28th of January. So we're going to be going through a whole bunch of things: the blood spatter, cleaning up the murder scene, possible time frames, and how she possibly did this in the amount of time that we were told, but also how on earth did she get to Florida. Okay, without further ado. Let's abandon the timeline completely and focus on a few things. Firstly, how long, roughly, does it take to clean up a crime scene? Now, obviously, that depends, as I've got it. This is a basic Google search, but a minor or mild crime scene, this is based on people that actually clean up crime scenes, so they do know. A mild or minor crime scene process can take between 4 to 10 hours, depending on techniques. Surprisingly, crime scene cleaning can take up to 48 hours in serious and messy scenarios. So that's obviously getting it absolutely spotless. But let's just say, for argument's sake, on the very minimum side of it, it takes 4 hours to clean up what we know is a large amount of blood. So where's that 4 hours? That's one thing. Another thing I would like to address in the same instance is the amount of time that it would take for blood to soak or go through the mattress here and through the carpet and onto the floor. Now, it depends completely on the volume of blood, but as we can see here, there's a fair amount here, but there's a lot of blood spatter on the wall as well. So there's a lot of blood down here, which is dripping blood, and then we have splatter on the wall here. So from what I've learnt, the time period it would take is dependent on the amount of blood, but also dependent on the amount of product that was used to clean it. So if she tipped half a bottle of vinegar on top of it, or any one of those cleaning supplies, that has then diluted the blood, which is why they've had to send it away to get it tested, and it would enable the dripping onto the floor to happen a little quicker. But where I'm going to with this is it would have taken a bit of time with his head laying on the bed for this to occur. So he was bleeding long enough and large enough amount of blood to have been in that position for a little while. Now, for her to actually clean that up straight away, it would take a long time, but she would have to get to it quite quickly because it would dry and it leaves a stain on it, and I'll show you a couple of things with that in a minute, a forensic site that shows us things. So there's 4 hours basically in cleaning up. There's roughly, you could probably say, an hour or so that Gannon could have been laying on the bed. And there is actually one other thing that I have found out, and that is that the preliminary thing, blood splatter producing events, Mr. Griffin did not believe the blood stains were aspirated blood. Now I've learnt that that means, because there's no air bubbles in the stains, it means that he didn't have blood in his nose or nasal passages or in his mouth or anything like that, which then shows them that he was deceased at that point. So when he received the blow or whatever it was, which I will discuss in a minute, that killed him, it killed him straight away. That is the forensic, as far as I can understand it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand it, that means that the final blow or whatever it was that actually killed him straight away. He didn't breathe in any blood or exhale any blood. It was an instant, very forceful, in my opinion, quick at that moment. Now I'm not talking about what led up to it and etc., but his death, because of this no aspirated blood and lack of air bubbles, to me shows that he died upon hitting that, being hit in the head. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of other areas. The blood spatter itself. Here is the photo of the wall next to Gannon'S bed. There's blood on the floor there, on the concrete. That's where the carpet's been taken out. And all of these areas here are the 50 droplets of blood. Now, from what I have learnt on this page here, Routledge, about spattered blood, well, I'm going to read it to you. It'll tell us a few things. Now, well, firstly, I will go back here and just show you this. So, Mr. Griffin, the specialist, has reported that the blood spatter producing events, which could include gunshot, blunt force, or a stabbing. Now, the reason why he said those is because of this. This is the categories of blood spatter. There's 3 areas: secondary mechanisms, satellite spatter, impact mechanisms, and projection mechanisms. Gannon falls under impact mechanisms: gunshot, beating, stabbing, power tools, etc. That I believe is why that doctor has come up with that, because that's the type of splatter. Now, that doesn't mean that a gun was used and a knife was used and he was beaten. It means that it's an impact mechanism. I mean, there was areas of cast off. It doesn't appear to be arterial blood, because there would be a whole lot more. That's when your throat has been cut. And there was no expiration or aspiration. So that's sort of, it's all of this and a little of this. So this that's come from Mr. Griffin, the crime scene specialist, has said that it could include gunshot, blunt force, or stabbing, because that's exactly what impact mechanism spatter dictates. So we are not to assume that she used all of these objects. I want to warn you, if you are queasy at all, you're going to see blood stains right now. Not Gannon'S, not a child's, but there's going to be blood. Now, this is the sort of thing you're looking at with a gunshot. A lot of blood and a noise. Okay, so you're going to hear a gun. I don't think anybody heard a gun, and personally I don't believe there was a gun involved. I think it was just a part of that impact spatter area. So, impact spatter associated with beating or stabbing. Now, these are the blood patterns for that. So A and B. A is impact spatter produced by a beating mechanism on smooth cardboard vertically, and B on smooth cardboard horizontally. So it just shows you the different ways, you know. Now this is vertically it's straight on, but horizontally there's a trajectory to it. Okay. So impact spatter associated with beating and stabbing events generally exhibits a size range of 1 to 3 millimeters in diameter. Now I know we can't see a lot, but I don't believe these are giant amounts of blood. It's droplets, as they've said. So 1 to 3 millimeters in diameter would make sense. The spatters may be smaller or larger than this general range, depending on the force of the impact, etc. Exposed blood, such as on the skin as a result of a wound, must exist for impact spatters to be created. The blood or bloodied area itself does not have to receive the impact. For example, if a victim has blood on his face, a blow struck to the back of the head can translate enough force to spatter blood on the front of the head. So just thinking about this for a minute, it is an impact wound or impact spatter, exposed blood on the skin, which we won't know until afterwards obviously, such as a result of a wound, must exist for impact spatters to be created. So then this leads me, in my opinion, from how I see it, that he actually already had a wound prior to the final blow. Now I don't know when this wound occurred, and we'll look at the timeline shortly, but that's what I see from this. Please tell me if you feel differently. I'm only a human. I don't know everything, obviously. So this is A, a gunshot, B, aspirated blood, which we know he did not have, and C, a beating. Now that gunshot, I mean, it's straight on, so it's not trajectory. These are all straight on. But to me, it represents more like C, the beating, instead of tons and tons of. There'd be more blood on the walls, I believe, if it was a gun. So C, a beating, is what it seems to me to be. The weapon used in the assault, whether a sharp object or e.g. knife or glass, or a blunt object, a bat or block, concrete block, and the number of blows inflicted have effects on the resulting pattern. Mechanisms other than a beating or a stabbing, such as gunshots, expiration of blood, and satellite spattering, may also produce spatter in the size range of less than 1 to 3 mil. So it could be a gunshot. They can't rule that out. They have to check it. But I don't believe that it is. I believe it was something more than that. I think it was perhaps a knife, or remembering that they said also that there was injury. This feeling that maybe the knife was involved and there was a stabbing and it was around his torso, like I thought initially when I saw the chart. So it seems to me that there was injury prior to his eventual death. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that the injury was occurring from Sunday night all the way through Monday until she killed him, allegedly. Again, I'm sorry, this is just another wound. It's not Gannon, nothing like that. But this is an arterial spurt on a wall. So that's what that would look like if a knife was used and his throat was cut. Now it doesn't look like that. unless of course he was laid down with his head near the edge of the bed and she like slowly slit his throat or something, but that wouldn't make sense because he would move and grab it and it would spurt. So that to me rules out the knife in terms of the head, but I still feel that perhaps there was a knife or something going on in that torso area. I'm interested to know what the object was that she hit him with. I don't believe it was her fists. She's obviously hit him, allegedly, hard enough to cause his death very quickly. So there has to be an object that they're going to find, or hopefully have found, that will relate it back to what happened. It's awful, so awful to speak of this, but I know people want to know what happened. I want to know what happened. I'm very interested in the forensic side of it as well as the astrology of it, and this case has blown my mind. I'm going to show you some other things that I just can't quite add up, but sort of feel as though is beginning to add up. Okay, so here's my timeline for the 26th, the 27th, and some of the 28th, and it doesn't even encompass the whole thing. In fact, this is the written timeline, and it goes 4 pages and pages. But there's something interesting that I do want to mention about that. Okay, so on the 26th, this is how I see it. On the 26th, she went hiking in the morning. Apparently, she had a cry about things. Prior to that, she'd been Googling consistently about how she's taking the brunt of looking after the children, she's not loved, etc., blaming Landon, blaming everybody but herself, and blah blah. And then she went hiking and started crying, apparently. I think it was probably at this time she realised, if she did indeed cry, I think it was at this time that she realised she was going to do something. It was time for people to pay, like she said in her Google search. At 10:54 she sent this text to Al regarding the fire, and at around midnight, 12:09, she did a Google search about the fire. Now, we were shown a video, that awful video where it sounds like he's saying he's bleeding, and it was assumed to be around the time of the candle. But when you think about it, there's no reference to the candle. There's only a reference to the sofa and did he do it on purpose. And we know that she likes to throw nuggets of truth in her lies. And she didn't just record that for no reason. There was a reason for it, and it was to try and be an alibi or something, some crazy ass reason. But is it possible that she didn't record that at the incident of the candle, and that was actually recorded later, and it was to do with something else? We don't know, because the candle incident hasn't been brought up in detail. We're only seeing Google searches and things like that. And in that respect, I have to say that I believe that half of the Google searches that she did were lies to put the police off, because she deleted a whole bunch of searches. So she had the presence of mind to delete some but leave some up, and I'm going to go through those and I'll show you why I think that's the case too. Okay, oh, and something else that occurred to me that I wrote down the end of here. The alteration of bloodstains by heat, fire or smoke may also cause problems for analysis. Bloodstains covered with soot may be entirely missed at the scene of a homicide that preceded a fire. Heat and fire may also cause existing bloodstains to fade or be completely destroyed. Now, I saw that on that page, the forensic page, and it really caught my eye, because how do we know that she didn't deliberately set the fire to try and cover up something? To try and cover up an initial wound, an initial beating. So what I'm saying is, we don't truly know. We only know what we think we know, and as it's going to come out, we're going to find it to be very different. So I think that could be the case. Okay, moving on. The 27th of January, she was busy. So busy. Now, there's something interesting, and I will grab that. Okay, so we now know that she lost her job at the school. We're not sure whether she even told Al or told anybody that she'd lost her job. The search on the 27th at 1:01 a.m. is, "Son is sick, but I have to go to work." Well, no, she didn't. She didn't have to go to work. So that leads me to believe this is all a lie. When you start looking at this document thinking that she's trying to put off people, I mean, there could be real ones in here. Like, I think her motive is quite clear. She was pissed off with raising the kids. She didn't want to do it anymore. But I also believe that these are some planted ones. Now, my son burned the carpet. How do I fix it? Why did she feel the need to type in, "My son burned the carpet"? Why wouldn't you just type in, "How do you fix burnt carpet"? You know, it's like she just wanted to put in there that her son burnt the carpet. And then, will humidifier help if exposed to smoke? Well, that covers up the smoke story if she set a fire to try and cover up evidence. Colorado law for kids staying at home. She doesn't care about the Colorado law for them staying at home. This is a search to make it look like she cares. But she doesn't. School is out. Is it okay for my kid to stay home alone? Now, that's weird. But school, it wasn't out. So why is she typing that? That's like a random search that is weird. The next thing, "Son is sick, but I have to go to work." Yeah, she didn't have to go to work. We all know that. She lost her job. Can he stay home alone? Like, if he was sick, it's because she made him sick, in my opinion. And I will show you this, because I can't get this out of my mind, and the fact that the astrology shows that this could be the case. I'm going to show you something to do with poisoning now. So let's go over to there. This can't be ignored. I remember when this came out. It is between her and Al. She is saying he's talking about a friend that brother has a car and doing a sleepover. Same kid that asked about bath salts. Absolutely not. I haven't let him ever do a sleepover, and he will not sleep over. We don't even have bath salts. It's like the ones for the tub. Yes, research it. It's bad. It's kind of like meth, when it's like drugs. It's deadly. There, here's a picture of bath salts. This, she said. And where did that picture come from? I think. And then Gannon came in my room and asked me about it. I gave him a bath balm and he took 2 baths. I thought he was dirty from pants. So this to me screams something really weird. She didn't just add this for nothing. Like I said, the nuggets of truth are in there. And this is one of them. 8:13 and 8:17 a.m. Letitia takes photos of Gannon in bed. Now, it's floated around that perhaps he was deceased in those photos. Now, weirdly, he's in the position where if he's asleep, it's similar, or if not the same position as where the injury is. But in my mind, he just couldn't have been dead on the 26th in the evening because, well, the blood would have dried. If she was cleaning it the next day, it would have been a whole lot harder. It doesn't make sense as to all of the movements that was done. I just can't think, from what I've learned from blood and everything else and the limited amount of time she had, and then the long stretches of time she had, that he was deceased in those photos. So I think that was her sicko way of saying, look, he was alive. You know, I imagine there's a lot of photos that we haven't seen. Well, there will be, 100%. 10:19, her and Gannon go into the vehicle. Now, I suggest that perhaps Gannon is injured at this point, which is why he's sluggish. Now, it's either through what I showed with bath salts or whatever that deal is about, or he has been hit in the stomach or in the torso or injured in that area. And sorry, I heard some noise. So what strikes me is, why was all this stuff done on this day? It's very strange. Going to Petco. So she went to Petco at 11:22. Looked really sketchy. So to me, that's like Gannon is in the vehicle and dying. But personally, I can't see that he was bleeding unless she wrapped him or something a lot, because there was no evidence in that vehicle. 1:22, she went back to Petco. And she didn't have her phone all day either, so, which is unusual because, as we all know, she loves her phone. Then the whole scenario of her getting home is weird. So she arrives home at 19 minutes past 2, but doesn't go into the house till 2:30. That leaves 11 minutes before going into the house. So, like, she rushed out of the car and then did what? Killed him in 10 minutes? We'll reserve our judgment for that. So 2:30, she enters the home. 2:45, she unlocks her phone. There's multiple movements up and down around the place in the home. Not enough to be cleaning, but perhaps enough to be pacing and panicking and figuring out what the hell to do. It seems to me as though he's walked in the door, or he's ill. She's tried to get him out of the car. He's walked in the door and gone straight into bed. And what's happened after that has happened. So 2:52, there's more movement. 3:11, Lena gets off the school bus, but then she's in the house until 3:28. So Letitia says, Gannon's in your bedroom. Now, is that true or not? Because if he's been moved into the bedroom, that means that she's cleaning up. But it also means that he is, unless we see differently, not bleeding anymore, or the blood stopped and she's wrapped him or something like that. So he's possibly in her bed, wrapped up in something. She leaves to ride her bike. Harley comes home, takes Lena to the Dollar Tree, buys the things that she needs to clean, and then Letitia calls the police at 6:55. So in my opinion, and this also coincides with the chart, but with evidence and with what I see, I do believe that she actually gave him the final blow at around 4 o'clock. I think that she was running around deciding what to do, and she's already injured him to the point of near death. So I truly think that it was around 4 p.m. that he was killed. I think in the 10 minutes after he entered, he just went and laid down. I mean, we don't know. We've seen the AT&T or the video from inside the basement and whatnot, and it does appear at times that there could be Gannon standing there and Letitia moving. So we don't know the full extent of that, and that's something to remember as well. But from what I can see on the 27th, she's obviously taking precautions in order to not get caught for something. So what's she taking precautions to not get caught for? Is it because this is planning? And what I'm thinking is that she did a very cursory cleanup of the visible blood for when the police were coming at 6:55, or she didn't know what time they were coming. Now, she had to clean up at some point because Al was coming home the next day. So she did have to do the big cleanup, which is going to take could take 4 hours unless she did a really, really bad job. At least a couple of hours, you would think. So I suggest that he was murdered around 4 o'clock, and then after the police, but before the police came, before 6:54, she did the cleaning. So between sending Harley off and Lena and calling the police, she did that cleaning there. That gives enough time. The document says that there's still visible blood and she didn't clean up everything, but the amount of blood that's in that area, it definitely would have taken at least a couple of hours. So I would have to assume that the majority of the cleaning was done between 4:40 and 6:50, and then the rest of the cleaning was done after the police came at 10:02. I think he's already in the trunk at that point, obviously, like they believe. And then from 10:22, I think when they leave onwards, she's got the whole evening to scrub that floor and clean it up. She could clean it, the best she could, but obviously the texture of the walls actually maintained some of the blood, and she wouldn't have been able to get it out no matter what. So that's the 27th. Jam-packed day, full of strange things, strange alibis to put her in places where it seems that the 2-hour gap between Petco and Petco is the reason why she did all of this, and perhaps that was to find the place that she was going to put Gannon. So this 27th is planning day. In the afternoon, the day of the murder, cleaning up in the night time, and then the 28th it begins again. 4:15 a.m. Google search, what is the process for our runaway child? 4:16, police steps for our runaway. 4:36, today's flight from here to somewhere. 5:14, she texts with the babysitter about Gannon being missing and confirmed that he didn't go to school and that she was going to take him to the doctor. 8:17, she rented the vehicle 8:30 she took her V-dub into the short-term car park. Then at 8:50 picked up Al in the rental car, while her car, which one can only assume has Gannon in it, is left at the airport. There's discussion about Gannon'S toothbrush, the Nintendo Switch. 7 o'clock, the Tiguan, the Volkswagen, her car is removed from the short-term parking. At 8 o'clock, she pulls over and is seen on King Soopers and Wendy's surveillance. 8:30 to 10:30, Harley's phone shows that she's at home. 9:15 to 9:30, the Tiguan, which has now got a GPS on it from the police, has gone to South Perry Park Road, which is where they found the bloody board on the 15th of February. So she drove the Volkswagen there, and they believe she put Gannon there. Then she called Harley up, or asked Harley to come and fetch her. Now, that's so weird, isn't it? Because that means she drove the Volkswagen there, parked it nearby, then called Harley to come and fetch her. That would have been so she didn't have to take the Tiguan home, obviously, that night. She was trying to keep it out of view because of whatever she'd just done with it. So then she brought in Harley into that part of it. So here's the more detailed one. She drove into a rural area near Highway 105 and then drove out. There was mud on her car as well, we need to remember that. She drove somewhere where there was mud. Then, after all this, amazingly, at 10:45, she texted the police and said a whole bunch of things. You can hear this on I'm not going to repeat it, you would have probably heard it a million times. But who on earth texts the police at 10:45 at night and says the things that she said? So anyway, obviously we know then she was called in to go to the police. She went through the car wash, washed the blood off the bumper, and then went straight to the police, and then made up all this terrible story of being raped and abducted by Eduardo, and a Hispanic male, which conveniently is this time period of 3:30 and 4:30. I've got a couple of interesting screenshots that I think speak volumes. This one, she says here, so basically I have two choices: admit to something I didn't do in an accident form to get lesser time, or still get charged and convicted of something I didn't do because I could never have a trial in Colorado. So that's it, right? The other person then says, if you were innocent then, of course I would never admit to doing something you didn't do. They have to prove to charge you, but I think they're trying to build a case against you. She put proof that I drove to Petco, or half evidence that they only have one side of a truck. What evidence though, since you have experience? So she's asking this person to help her with what evidence they're trying to build the case against her with, and that to me shows that Petco was just proof that she drove there. It put her there for some reason. Maybe she was going to kill him that day and she decided at that time and decided not to. maybe something happened, someone saw her do something, I don't know, you never know, something could have interrupted that point. Then this one here, another Facebook post. I'm leaving because I don't get to sit online and play keyboard detective. I've been in contact with them regular. You will see in the end, Mum has a lot to do with it. Just wait. This isn't her past, it's her present. She knows where he is. Again, nuggets of truth in her bullshit, which is that you will see in the end, Mum has a lot to do with it. Just wait. Well, Mum does have a lot to do with it, because that's what Letitia Stauch did this because of. Someone had to pay, and it was going to be his mum, his dad, and him. So these statements show that to me pretty clearly. Now, this is the text. It's dated Sunday, January 26th, 10:54 p.m. Don't panic, but Gannon turned on a candle downstairs and set the downstairs on fire. I'm sure it would have said. He's fine, he's scared and saying sorry and freaking out. Now, we know that this is what she said, but is this again just another alibi, and this time to Al, because she knew that the video was going to come out, or like, it's crazy that she put that video out there, and I don't think there's been a case like this, in all honesty, but it seems as though this is all steps to give her an alibi of some sort, and I feel like the final one will be that he did something, he set fire to something, and she accidentally did something else, or I have this feeling that maybe if a candle is involved at all, it's something like I said before, she's thought of or tried to set fire to something to cover up something. Or did she use some type of candle holder or something like that to hurt Gannon with? The candle represents something, but we have no context with it, really. I mean, this is good because it's date stamped and time stamped. We don't really know who it's to. I mean, I think it's assumed it's to Al. But, there's a lot of things that we have no context behind. So we're going to be surprised the more and more we find out once this goes to court. So what happens after the 31st? The 31st, obviously she was a very busy lady. She gave an interview, as well as possibly moving Gannon. On Saturday, February the 1st, her Volkswagen Tiguan was searched. Then it jumps to February the 12th. We have 11 days. She released a statement to the media to clear things up about his foot bleeding in the garage and how he sat on the edge of the car, and she bandaged it up. He sat on the edge of the car, obviously, because she needed to cover the fact that there was blood on the rear of the Volkswagen. States there was a selfie taken that morning in the truck on the 12th. And the 13th, when the investigation was taking place. The 14th, when Al was asked to ask her, and she gave 4 different stories. The 15th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, when she takes that fake polygraph, And then the 27th, like, so much time goes by. She released another statement on the 27th saying that he'd pooped his pants and he was sick. So there's some indication in there of what was going on during the day. Arrest warrant was signed February 28th. She released another statement the next day, releasing the car rental receipts, and says she passed a private administered poly, which is the fake one. Then it was Monday the 2nd, she was arrested for first degree murder, and Gannon'S body was found in Florida. So obviously they believe that Gannon was disposed of in Florida between these two dates. So the flurry of activity starts again on the 14th. When was it? Was it between the 1st and the 12th? And obviously they think between the 3rd and the 5th, so they must have a bit of a time frame. So after they searched her Volkswagen, she took off in another car and put him in the alligator-infested river. That's just awful. Just to reiterate, as I understand it from reading everything that I've read and the affidavit a lot, the reason it was classed as gunshot, stabbing or object is because the spatter was an impact mechanism spatter instead of a secondary or projection. There was some projection mechanisms including cast off, but there was no expirated or aspirated blood, which means that the impact caused the death immediately. In my eyes, that's how I see it. That's because there was no air bubbles in the blood, so it means there was no blood coming out of his nostrils, out of his mouth, or anything like that. So the impact killed him. So the reason why it's classed as it, or appears like there's a gun, a knife, all sorts of weapons involved, I believe it just means that the type of spatter is an impact mechanism spatter, which is produced by either gunshot, beating, stabbing, or the use of blunt objects. As I said before, personally, I have a feeling that it's possible there was a knife involved, but it feels like blunt objects is more so. And I can't help but consider that the candle is more important than we've been led to believe so far, and that perhaps the beating, or like instead of power tools, etc., the impact came from something in her hand like a candle holder or something of weight, something of cast iron, I'm not sure, something like that. Gannon is represented by Mars, and Mars is iron and cast iron. So, I mean, Mars does represent all of these things. So it truly shows an impact spatter as well, just for that little bit of astrological knowledge. Okay, I hope this clears up a few things. I wanted to understand how the blood spatter worked, and I couldn't understand why it seemed though there were 3 different weapons used, and as I can see now, it is not the case, and that there was possibly only one, maybe 2, but only one. But as we all know, the more information that comes out, the worse this is going to be, I know. Thank goodness Gannon is no longer going through this, and showed us exactly what was going on, showed us the way, and yeah. Until we find out more, take care everybody. Lots of love. Bye.